A. August 8th, 2018. This isn't my bed. Those words appeared inside Nina's skull almost instantly as her eyes opened and the consciousness of the day settled upon her. The sheets were bright white and felt fresh on her skin, not the ones that she had fallen into the previous evening. No, she was sure that she had crashed onto the pink paisley sheets that were the last remnant from her college days. Parker had teased her about them at first, but he got used to them and she doubted that he would have excused himself from their evening activities because of them. Last night was no different. What had happened last night? A healthy meal, maybe. Definitely too much to drink. The bright daylight poured in through the half-open blinds in the most unforgiving manner. Her hand flew up to her head to shield her sensitive eyes, bullied by a splitting headache and alcohol-induced dehydration. Or so she assumed. "Hey there, sleepyhead," Parker cooed as he entered the room. He had a glass of water in one hand, the other folded over. She guessed there was a painkiller in there for her. Nina groaned in response. "I figured as much," he said sweetly and handed her the medicine. She gulped down all the water selfishly. Did Parker have a hangover? Did he want any water? Nina didn't ask because at that moment she genuinely didn't care. Anything to stop the pounding in her head. She was also coming to realize that while she did not wake up in her own bed, she didn't wake up in Parker's either. He decorated his bachelor pad in deep, dark blues and greens with some Trekkie movie posters taped to the wall. This sleek and elegant room, with clean lines and a king mattress with a pillow top, was comfortable beyond anything Nina had ever experienced. Although, perhaps the leftovers of her intoxication were simply trying to compel her body to sleep in. It wasn't a hotel room. In spite of the plush bedding, she was sure of it. The bed frame pushed up against the window, the harsh light unimpeded as it headed for her eyeline. Every hotel she'd ever stayed in had blackout curtains and the bed solidly against the wall. That practice never made any sense to Nina. People could still hear the happenings in the adjoining room. Nina sat up slowly. Parker continued to dress. He didn't seem to be as groggy and hungover as Nina. A bit of memory trickled into her mind. They had gone out to dinner, and then to the new tapas bar around the corner from their subway stop last night. She couldn't recall why they had been out celebrating, or how much they had, or when they got... not home. Here, she guessed. She wanted to ask questions, but she also wanted silence. Parker had been jovial the previous evening, excited as though he was on the edge of something. Nina had worried that he would plan to propose, as though his grand plan to end their new pattern of bickering was marriage. And then he was sweet and caring this morning. She tried not to be bitter and sarcastic, even in her internal thoughts. She knew that caustic material would seep out in her words, and given how kind he had been, she didn't want to appear ungrateful. They had gone a full 2 weeks without fighting, and she didn't want to be the one to spoil it because of a wretched hangover. Nina knew herself. She already felt grouchy and irritable because of the headache. Her stomach turned. She was hungry in the meanest sort of way. "I'm going to shower," Nina announced. Parker was more interested in the buttons on his shirt than anything she had to say at the moment. She hoped that the water would help her head, both the ache and her splotchy memory, all inconsistent and irritated from whatever alcohol she had consumed. "Go for it, sweetie. You're already a little late as is, so you might as well enjoy the morning." Parker pecked her on the cheek as he strolled out of the bedroom, adjusting his tie along the way. He was very chipper, and unusually non-verbal, almost intentionally brief. What? No diatribe that my behavior today would become a pattern of tardiness that would lead to fewer raises and therefore one day cause me to become a penniless beggar or some other doomsday scenario? Ugh, that putrid cynicism. She had to push it back. The mental processes were working painfully slow that morning, and it finally caught up and pushed the vitriol to the side. "Wait, I'm late? What time is it?" Suddenly, every cell in her body was awake. She glanced at the clock on the bedside table, an artsy analog clock with 4 hashes on the 15s and nothing in between. Clearly, this was something that neither she nor Parker would have selected. Parker had a binary clock in his apartment, and he always got a chuckle when Nina would try for a full 60 seconds to decode it before giving up and just checking her phone. Nina had a digital clock, because for all the benefits bestowed upon her by the parochial schools she attended, some rudimentary skills had been omitted in favor of new technologies like personal computers and typing. Granted, the latter had benefited her greatly in her career, but she felt like a complete dolt for not being able to read an analog clock as though it were a second language. She always had to double-check in her head a few times that she read it correctly, and even then, she would peek at her phone to check. Nina's brain was in no state to try and decipher this minimalist art piece masquerading as a clock. She lunged for her phone, quietly charging on the nightstand. It felt thinner in her palm, as though she had to squeeze it a bit tighter to keep it from sliding out. She swiped across the screen to unlock it and saw the time. 7:45. Crap! It was Wednesday. She had a weekly staff meeting every Wednesday morning at 8 sharp. Nina opened her text to the most recent messages, ignoring the other alerts and reminders that scrolled along the top of her phone. The first message in her history was from Carol, her cube mate. You coming in today? Nina pinged her to let Carol know she would be tardy and asked if she could cover for her in the meeting. Nina quickly undressed while she listened to Parker moving about downstairs. Water running on and off, cabinet sliding open and closed. Hey, Parker, she called out, hoping to catch him before he strolled out for the day. Nina's phone buzzed. Of course, happy to, Carol responded. Nina could always count on her. Nina smiled as she pushed the notification away and headed into the bathroom, conveniently located off the bedroom. It was an intuitive location for it to be, but it still shocked her that she had located it so effortlessly. Yes, Parker asked from behind her. She spun around to see him perched on the doorframe. Where are we? She asked in a mild tone. She didn't want it to sound like she had forgotten whatever romantic gesture had brought them to this location. I definitely drank too much last night. Can you help with the details? He smiled and approached her. As she stood half naked in this strange room, the act of his peck on the forehead reassured her. It's okay. We're good, he said with a wink before he turned to leave the room. Uh-oh. She must have said something horrible or spurned his advances the night before. All Nina had learned from that brief exchange was that she had to start working at fixing things between them before he ran out of steam. She had noticed his increased efforts to make things better 2 weeks earlier, when he arrived home with a bouquet of scarlet roses and his usual churlish remarks had ceased. Could 2 weeks erase months of bickering? Wasn't there something once said about love not keeping a scorecard? Her brain worked rapidly to try and sort every piece of information coming in, all while battling a nasty headache. Essential activities won out for the moment, and she focused on getting cleaned up. The impeccable design carried into this room with neutral tones, carefully positioned succulents, and heated floor tiles. She fiddled with the knobs for a moment or two, trying to figure out if up or down meant on, and which one turned the distinct jets from a drought to a torrent. The shower was hot and steady. The separate jets that hit her upper and lower back were soothing, enough so that she almost forgot that she was in a strange bathroom. Almost. She found the bottle of shampoo, conditioner, and body wash were all high quality. She assumed this was another one of the benefits of staying in a gig economy rental, the logical conclusion she had reached, as she pieced together the few clues she had to work with. If only she could remember what happened last night. A naughty staycation night at an upscale apartment to escape our usual routine, perhaps? An unusual idea, but at least Parker tried something new. She emerged from the shower, yesterday's dirt cleaned away. Annoyingly, the hot water and steam did little to assuage her headache. Nina moved to put her clothes back on. She would have to go home and change. Parker sat waiting for her in the bedroom when she got out of the shower. Feeling any better? His face was as hopeful as his question. His large brown eyes looking up at her, puppy dog eyes if there ever were a pair. His brown hair swept to the side, hair gel holding it in place, for now. It usually fell across his forehead and into his eyes by the end of the day. The stubble that played with the idea of banding together into a beard had been cleared away, Parker's scruff from the day before shaved clean. Slightly, Nina shrugged as she started to turn the clothes that she had strewn on the floor right side out. You could always skip out today, go back to bed, rest, relax. You work too hard anyway. He stood as he said this and opened the closet on the far side of the room. He grabbed a set of polished black shoes. It was at this moment she noticed that Parker had dressed much nicer than usual. His days were spent in a theoretical physics lab. Jeans, Converse sneakers, and a black tee with some scientist-only joke printed on it was his standard uniform. Did he have a presentation today? Should she have remembered that? That would be nice, she answered, as though she were some artificial intelligence, having found the appropriate response that required no custom linguistic flair or personalization. That would be nice. Something any person or robot could spit out on command. I could stay with you. He looked up at her with a hopeful suggestion in his eyebrows. I wouldn't want you to skip out on work today. You've got important things going on. Wow, said like a genuinely supportive girlfriend. Nina amazed herself at her ability to be compassionate in response to his kindness, to mirror his sweetness with her own. Is that how couples were able to stay together for so long, following the path that their partner laid for them? I smile, you smile. I scream, you scream. A self-fulfilling prophecy either way.